The stone corridors of GLAMIS Castle exhaled centuries of accumulated dread through their porous walls, each footstep echoing against granite that had absorbed more screams than prayers. Candlelight flickered across portraits whose eyes seemed to track movement with unnatural precision, while the metallic scent of ancient iron mingled with something far more unsettling. The persistent odor of decay that no amount of restoration could eliminate. Heavy oak doors, reinforced with medieval ironwork, stood perpetually locked along the east wing, their surfaces scarred by what appeared to be desperate clawing from within. The floorboards above the sealed chambers creaked under invisible weight during the witching hours, accompanied by muffled sounds that servants refused to acknowledge in daylight. Yet this fortress of whispered horrors served as the beloved childhood home of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the woman who would become Britain's most cherished Queen Mother. Was she an innocent victim of circumstance, or did the castle's darkest secrets help forge the steel beneath her gracious smile? The ancient stones of GLAMIS Castle had witnessed 11 centuries of violence before young Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon ever drew breath within its walls. The fortress that would shape Britain's most beloved Queen Mother first emerged from Scottish mists as a royal hunting lodge, where kings came to pursue deer through primeval forests and occasionally to pursue far deadlier quarry among their own ranks. The very ground beneath its foundations had been consecrated by royal blood long before the first stone was mortared into place, creating a legacy that would seep upward through granite and timber to poison generations of inhabitants. Archaeological evidence suggests that the original structure occupied the exact site where King Malcolm II met his violent end in 1034, his death marking the beginning of a succession crisis that would convulse Scotland for decades. The earth itself seemed to retain memory of that ancient murder, for every subsequent building erected upon the location experienced inexplicable structural failures, foundations that shifted without geological cause, and masonry that developed stress fractures in patterns that defied engineering explanation. Medieval chroniclers noted these anomalies with the superstitious dread characteristic of their age, yet modern geological surveys have failed to identify any natural phenomena that might account for the persistent architectural instabilities. The castle's most infamous connection to regicide emerged through its association with Macbeth's assassination of King Duncan, an event that Shakespeare would later immortalize, but which historical records place with uncomfortable precision within GLAMIS's ancient walls. Contemporary accounts describe Duncan's arrival at the castle in August 1040, his retinue confident in the sacred laws of hospitality that should have guaranteed his protection. The guest chambers where the king retired for his final sleep occupied the castle's eastern wing, the same section that would later be sealed off from all visitors and residents alike. Physical evidence of the murder remained embedded in the castle's very architecture for centuries afterward, as repeated attempts to renovate the eastern chambers revealed stone flooring stained with iron deposits that resisted all efforts at removal. The Strathmore family's acquisition of GLAMIS Castle in 1372 through royal grant seemed initially to promise a fresh beginning for the blood-soaked fortress. Sir John Lyon received the property as reward for his marriage to Jean Stuart, daughter of King Robert II, a union that bound the castle's fate to Scottish royalty for all subsequent generations. Yet the Lyon family's stewardship merely added new layers of tragedy to the castle's accumulated darkness. Within 3 generations, violent death had claimed 5 successive heirs under circumstances that chroniclers described with barely concealed unease. Sir John Lyon himself perished in 1382 during a duel fought over disputed lands, his death occurring exactly 10 years after taking possession of Glamis. His son died in battle at Harlaw in 1411, while his grandson met his end through assassination in 1435. The pattern of premature, violent deaths continued with mathematical precision that defied statistical probability. By 1500, the Lyon lineage had produced 14 heirs, of whom only 3 had died of natural causes, and none had lived beyond the age of 45. The castle's reputation for supernatural manifestations first gained documented credibility during the 15th century, when ecclesiastical records began noting unusual occurrences that church officials felt compelled to investigate. Bishop William Elphinstone of Aberdeen conducted a formal inquiry in 1486, following reports from local clergy that midnight masses were being celebrated in the castle chapel by figures who cast shadows, and spoke Latin in dialects that predated the Norman conquest. The bishop's investigation lasted 3 weeks and concluded with his recommendation that the chapel be deconsecrated and sealed, a suggestion that the Lyon family implemented with suspicious haste. Servants' testimonies from this period, preserved in Kirk session records and estate documents, describe phenomena that transcended mere superstition. Kitchen staff reported fires that ignited spontaneously in hearths that had been thoroughly doused, while stable hands documented horses that refused to enter specific stalls and developed bleeding wounds overnight without apparent cause. The castle's eastern wing generated particular dread among the household, as multiple witnesses described hearing sounds of medieval combat emanating from rooms known to be empty, complete with the clash of steel on steel and the screams of wounded men. 14 documented supernatural incidents occurred between 1400 and 1600, involving 43 separate witnesses whose testimonies were recorded by local clergy. 27 servants abandoned their positions at Glamis during this period, citing supernatural encounters as their reason for departure. The castle required structural modifications to 11 different rooms due to unexplained damage that appeared overnight, including stone walls that developed cracks in the shape of human figures. 8 separate bishops visited Glamis to investigate reported paranormal activity, with 6 recommending various forms of spiritual intervention. Rational explanations for these phenomena existed within the context of medieval understanding and living conditions. Castle architecture naturally created acoustic anomalies that could transform ordinary sounds into seemingly supernatural manifestations, while the psychological pressure of living within a structure associated with multiple violent deaths would predispose inhabitants toward perceiving normal events as otherworldly. The prevalence of ergot poisoning from contaminated grain supplies could account for shared hallucinations among residents, while carbon monoxide seepage from poorly ventilated hearths might explain the lethargy and disorientation that often preceded supernatural encounters. Yet the sheer volume and consistency of reported incidents at Glamis exceeded what might reasonably be attributed to environmental factors or psychological suggestion. The castle's documented history revealed patterns of unexplained phenomena that persisted across centuries, involving witnesses from diverse social backgrounds and varying levels of education. Most significantly, the supernatural manifestations appeared to correlate with specific historical events and family crises, suggesting either an extraordinary series of coincidences or the operation of forces that transcended conventional understanding. The blood-stained foundations upon which Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon would build her childhood memories had been consecrated by centuries of violence and watered by generations of tears. The castle that would nurture Britain's future Queen Mother bore within its stones the accumulated weight of 1,000 years of Scottish history, each tragedy adding another layer to the psychological and spiritual atmosphere that would shape her formative years. Behind the Strathmore family's aristocratic facade lurked a genetic nightmare that would define the castle's most terrifying legend. The transformation of GLAMIS Castle's eastern wing during the early 19th century represented far more than architectural renovation. It constituted a deliberate attempt to conceal a family secret, so shameful that 3 successive Earls of Strathmore would take extraordinary measures to ensure its concealment from both society and history. The modifications began in 1821 under the direction of Thomas Lyon Bowes, the 11th Earl, whose sudden obsession with restructuring the castle's layout coincided with the mysterious disappearance of his younger brother from all family records. The architectural changes themselves defied conventional logic and building practices of the period. Master craftsmen imported from Edinburgh found themselves constructing walls within walls, creating a labyrinthine network of hidden passages and sealed chambers that served no discernible practical purpose. The Eastern Wing's original medieval layout had featured a series of interconnected rooms with clear sight lines and efficient traffic flow. Yet the 1821 renovations deliberately obscured these natural pathways. Workers installed false walls that reduced room sizes by half, bricked up windows that faced the castle's gardens, and created dead-end corridors that terminated in solid stone barriers. Contemporary building records, preserved in the Strathmore family archives, reveal expenditures that far exceeded normal renovation costs for comparable properties. The Earl commissioned specialized ironwork for reinforced door, frames, imported German locks designed for institutional use, and ordered custom-fitted shutters that could only be operated from the exterior. Most peculiarly, the renovation included installation of a sophisticated ventilation system that connected the sealed chambers to the castle's main kitchen, allowing for discreet delivery of food and water without requiring direct human contact with the wing's mysterious occupant. The legend of the monster of GLAMIS emerged from these architectural modifications and the family's increasingly paranoid efforts to maintain absolute secrecy regarding the Eastern Wing's purpose. Servants hired during this period signed unprecedented confidentiality agreements that included financial penalties for discussing their duties, while visiting guests found themselves tactfully diverted from any approach to the affected areas. The Earl's behavior during social gatherings became markedly erratic whenever conversation turned to family genealogy or castle history, leading contemporary observers to speculate about hidden scandals that transcended typical aristocratic indiscretions. Victorian medical understanding provided a grim context for the family's apparent shame regarding their concealed relative. The period's primitive comprehension of genetic disorders meant that severe birth defects were often interpreted as divine punishment or evidence of moral corruption within family bloodlines. Conditions such as severe spina bifida, hydrocephalus, or genetic syndromes that affected physical development would have been considered not merely medical afflictions, but existential threats to family honor and social standing. The Strathmore lineage's position within Scottish aristocracy made public acknowledgement of such conditions potentially catastrophic to their political and economic prospects. Estate records from the 1830s document unusual supply requests that suggested the presence of a permanent invalid requiring specialized care. Monthly orders included medical supplies uncommon for typical household use, such as specialized feeding apparatus, restraining devices manufactured for institutional settings, and quantities of laudanum that exceeded what might be prescribed for conventional ailments. The castle's household accounts also reflected payments to discreet medical practitioners who visited GLAMIS under cover of darkness, and whose services were compensated through untraceable cash transactions rather than traditional banking methods. 14 Earl of Strathmore lineages had been documented over 6 centuries of family history, with genealogical records maintained in meticulous detail until the suspicious gaps that appeared after 1821. 3 family members officially disappeared from all documentation between that year and 1876, their names excised from family Bibles, portrait galleries, and even gravestone inscriptions in the family mausoleum. 127 rooms comprised the complete castle structure, yet 12 had remained permanently sealed since 1860, their entrances bricked over and their existence denied in all official architectural surveys. 6 successive family lawyers had been sworn to secrecy regarding what they termed the monster, each binding his successor to the same oath of silence that would persist well into the 20th century. The sounds that emanated from the eastern wing provided the most disturbing evidence of the family secret's reality. Multiple witnesses, including visiting clergy and government officials, documented hearing vocalizations that defied classification as either human or animal in origin. These sounds occurred with greatest intensity during family gatherings and celebrations, as though the hidden occupant possessed awareness of household activities and responded with distress to the proximity of relatives. Servants described hearing rhythmic impacts against stone walls that continued for hours, accompanied by a keening vocalization that penetrated even the castle's thick masonry. The psychological toll on successive earls became increasingly apparent as the decades passed. Each heir discovered the family burden upon reaching majority, at which point they underwent a visible transformation from optimistic young aristocrats to haunted, secretive figures who aged prematurely under the weight of their knowledge. The 12th Earl began drinking heavily within months of learning the truth, while the 13th Earl developed a nervous condition that required extended treatments at continental spas. Most significantly, each Earl became obsessively protective of the family secret, implementing increasingly elaborate security measures that transformed portions of GLAMIS Castle into what amounted to a private prison. Medical historians have proposed rational explanations for the monster legend that align with Victorian-era medical practices and social attitudes. Severe congenital disabilities were routinely hidden from public view during this period, with affluent families maintaining private facilities for disabled relatives rather than risking social ostracism. The sounds reported by witnesses could have resulted from neurological conditions that caused involuntary vocalizations, while the elaborate security measures might simply reflect the family's determination to provide humane care while preserving their social standing. Yet the extremity of the Strathmore family's concealment efforts exceeded what might be expected, even for severe disability cases of the era. The involvement of multiple lawyers in maintaining secrecy, the architectural modifications that approached institutional-level security, and the persistent psychological impact on successive family members suggested circumstances that transcended conventional medical conditions. The legend's persistence across multiple generations, supported by consistent witness testimony and documented architectural evidence, indicated either an extraordinary commitment to maintaining an elaborate hoax, or the presence of something within GLAMIS Castle's walls that genuinely defied rational categorization. The monster that haunted the eastern wing would cast its shadow across every subsequent generation of the Strathmore family, including the young Elizabeth Bowes Lyon. whose childhood would unfold within hearing distance of those terrible, inexplicable sounds. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's formative years unfolded within corridors where family servants crossed themselves and refused to venture after sunset. The future Queen Mother's childhood at GLAMIS Castle occurred during a period when the family's terrible secret had reached its most active and disturbing phase, with the Eastern Wing's mysterious occupant generating nightly disturbances that penetrated even the nursery quarters where young Elizabeth slept. Her earliest memories included the peculiar household rhythms that governed life at GLAMIS, where certain areas remained perpetually off-limits and conversations ceased abruptly whenever she approached the adults discussing family matters in hushed, anxious tones. The child who would one day comfort a nation during its darkest hours learned her first lessons in grace under pressure within rooms where unexplained sounds regularly shattered the nighttime silence. Elizabeth's nursemaid, Margaret MacDonald, documented in her private journal the extraordinary composure displayed by her young charge during incidents that reduced grown servants to tears of terror. When mysterious footsteps echoed through the corridors above the nursery, 5-year-old Elizabeth would calmly request that MacDonald sing louder to mask the disturbance. When doors slammed with supernatural force throughout the castle's upper floors, she would suggest moving their evening activities to the library, where the sound seemed less intrusive. The psychological architecture of Elizabeth's developing personality reflected the unique demands of her environment. Unlike children raised in conventional aristocratic households, she learned early to navigate spaces charged with unspoken dread and to interact with adults whose behavior patterns included sudden silences, nervous glances toward certain doorways, and elaborate routes through the castle that avoided entire sections of the building. Her remarkable self-possession, which would later serve her so well as Queen Mother, emerged from necessity rather than natural temperament, as she adapted to life in a household where emotional stability required constant vigilance. Servant testimonies from Elizabeth's childhood years provided disturbing insights into the daily reality of life at GLAMIS during this period. Cook Agnes Morrison recorded in letters to her sister that young Elizabeth often appeared in the kitchen during the early morning hours, claiming that voices had awakened her and requesting permission to sleep near the hearth, where the sounds seemed less frightening. Groundskeeper William Fraser documented incidents when Elizabeth asked seemingly innocent questions about the boarded windows in the Eastern Wing, wondering aloud why certain rooms required such heavy shutters and whether the people inside those rooms felt lonely without sunlight. The child's apparent acceptance of supernatural phenomena as normal household features suggested either remarkable adaptability or exposure so consistent that extraordinary events became ordinary through repetition. Elizabeth developed elaborate games that incorporated the castle's mysterious elements, creating imaginary friends whose activities coincided suspiciously with documented paranormal incidents. She would hold conversations with empty corners of rooms where servants reported seeing shadowy figures, and her play often included references to family members whose names appeared nowhere in official genealogical records. Family correspondence from this period revealed the adults' growing concern about Elizabeth's apparent sensitivity to the castle's supernatural atmosphere. Her mother, Cecilia Bowes-Lyon, wrote to her sister expressing worry that Elizabeth seemed to anticipate household disturbances before they occurred, becoming restless and seeking comfort in the hours preceding the most severe supernatural manifestations. The child would often refuse to play in certain areas of the castle on days when servants later reported unusual activity, displaying an intuitive awareness that unsettled the family's already strained nerves. The educational environment provided for Elizabeth reflected the unique challenges of maintaining normalcy within an abnormal household. Her governess, Madame Lang, arrived from Edinburgh with conventional expectations about aristocratic childhood education, but quickly discovered that lessons at GLAMIS required flexibility regarding location and timing. Certain subjects could only be taught in specific rooms due to areas where books would not remain on shelves and writing implements moved of their own accord. Mathematical instruction proved particularly challenging, as Elizabeth would become distracted by counting sounds that adults claimed not to hear, leading to exercises in arithmetic that incorporated the mysterious rhythmic patterns that echoed through the castle's walls. 23 separate servants worked in the Bowes-Lyon household between Elizabeth's birth in 1900 and her departure for London society in 1920, with an unusually high turnover rate of 37% annually. 14 of these departures were documented as occurring without standard notice periods, suggesting circumstances that motivated immediate resignation despite the loss of references and final wages. 8 nannies and governesses were employed during Elizabeth's childhood, compared to the typical aristocratic average of 2 or 3 for equivalent periods. 41 documented incidents of household staff reporting supernatural encounters occurred during Elizabeth's residence at GLAMIS, with 12 involving direct interaction between the child and unexplained phenomena. The social implications of Elizabeth's upbringing extended beyond mere exposure to supernatural events. Growing up within a household organized around concealing a shameful family secret taught her sophisticated skills in discretion and emotional management that would prove invaluable during her later royal career. She learned to read adult facial expressions for signs of stress related to family secrets, to redirect conversations that approached dangerous topics, and to maintain perfect composure while surrounded by barely controlled anxiety. These abilities, developed through childhood necessity, would later enable her to navigate the complex demands of royal protocol with seemingly effortless grace. Contemporary child psychology offers rational explanations for Elizabeth's adaptation to her unusual environment. Children possess remarkable capacity for normalizing even extraordinary circumstances when those circumstances remain consistent within their experience. Her apparent comfort with supernatural phenomena could reflect the natural adaptability that allows children to accept whatever reality surrounds them as normal. The imaginary friends and mysterious conversations might represent typical childhood fantasy behavior that coincidentally aligned with household superstitions, while her anticipatory behavior could result from unconscious pattern recognition rather than supernatural sensitivity. Yet the consistency and specificity of Elizabeth's responses to paranormal events exceeded what might be expected from normal childhood imagination or environmental adaptation. Multiple witnesses documented her apparent communication with invisible presences, her accurate predictions of supernatural disturbances, and her detailed knowledge of family history that she could not have acquired through conventional sources. The correlation between her behavior and documented paranormal incidents suggested either a remarkable series of coincidences or genuine sensitivity to forces that affected the entire household. The transformation of young Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon from a child who conversed with castle ghosts into the poised Queen Mother who would inspire a nation represented one of the most dramatic character developments in modern royal history. The skills she acquired while navigating GLAMIS Castle's supernatural atmosphere would serve her well during the constitutional crises, world wars, and family scandals that marked her adult life. Whether her childhood experiences represented elaborate family theater designed to maintain traditional ghost stories or genuine encounters with forces beyond rational explanation. They undeniably shaped the woman who would become one of Britain's most beloved royal figures. The little girl who learned to sleep peacefully despite mysterious footsteps overhead would grow into the Queen Mother, who could maintain perfect composure while London burned around her during the Blitz, suggesting that GLAMIS Castle's terrifying legacy ultimately produced something beautiful from its darkness. The castle's most persistent phantom had stalked the Bowes-Lyon family for generations, but her appearances intensified during times of mortal peril. Known throughout the household simply as the Grey Lady, this spectral figure had haunted GLAMIS Castle's corridors since the 14th century, her manifestations documented with meticulous precision by servants, family members, and distinguished guests whose testimonies carried considerable weight in aristocratic society. Unlike the chaotic disturbances emanating from the Eastern Wing, the Grey Lady's appearances followed distinct patterns that suggested intelligence and purpose, as though death itself had appointed her as guardian and herald for the Strathmore lineage. The earliest recorded encounter with the Grey Lady appeared in the household accounts of 1372, when Sir John Lyon first took possession of GLAMIS Castle. The family steward, Donald MacGregor, documented an incident in which a woman dressed in grey robes appeared before the castle's main entrance, gesturing frantically toward the eastern approach road. Within hours of this sighting, a messenger arrived bearing news that Sir John's father had died unexpectedly during his journey to celebrate his son's acquisition of the property. The correlation between the spectral warning and the family tragedy established a pattern that would repeat with disturbing consistency across subsequent generations. Physical descriptions of the Grey Lady remained remarkably consistent, despite spanning centuries of witnesses with varying levels of education and supernatural belief. She appeared as a woman of middle age, wearing a grey silk gown, characteristic of medieval court fashion, her face bearing expressions of urgent concern that seemed to intensify in direct proportion to the severity of approaching family crises. Witnesses consistently reported that her appearances were accompanied by a sharp drop in ambient temperature. The scent of roses that bloomed nowhere in the castle's gardens, and a profound sense of maternal protectiveness that seemed to emanate from her spectral presence. The Grey Lady's behavior during Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's childhood years suggested a particular attachment to the future Queen Mother that transcended her typical role as family harbinger. Servants noted that the phantom appeared with unusual frequency in corridors and rooms associated with young Elizabeth's daily routines, often positioning herself between the child and areas of the castle known to generate supernatural disturbances. Margaret MacDonald, Elizabeth's devoted nursemaid, documented multiple incidents in which the Grey Lady materialized during nighttime hours when mysterious sounds threatened to wake the sleeping child, her presence seeming to create a protective barrier that muffled the disturbing noises. The most significant Grey Lady encounter involving young Elizabeth occurred during the winter of 1909, when the child was 9 years old and recovering from a severe bout of pneumonia that had physicians fearing for her life. Family correspondence revealed that Elizabeth had been delirious with fever for 3 days, her condition deteriorating despite the best medical care available in rural Scotland. On the night when doctors prepared the family for the worst possible outcome, household staff reported seeing the Grey Lady standing vigil outside Elizabeth's bedroom door. Her normally urgent demeanor, replaced by serene watchfulness that continued until dawn broke and the child's fever finally subsided. Historical analysis of the Grey Lady's appearances revealed patterns that correlated with significant events in both family history and broader Scottish political developments. Her manifestations increased during periods of dynastic uncertainty, foreign wars that threatened Scottish independence, and internal conflicts that divided the noble houses to which the Strathmore family owed allegiance. The Phantom seemed particularly sensitive to threats against family members who showed potential for significant historical impact, appearing most frequently around individuals who would later achieve prominence in politics, military service, or social reform. 47 documented Grey Lady sightings occurred between 1372 and 1953, with witness testimonies preserved in family records, servant journals, and guest correspondence. 11 family deaths were preceded by spectral warnings within 72 hours, including 5 cases where the Grey Lady's urgent gestures correctly indicated the direction from which mortal danger would approach. 23 guests fled GLAMIS Castle prematurely due to supernatural encounters, with 12 specifically citing Grey Lady appearances as the catalyst for their sudden departures. 8 servants were dismissed for refusing to work in areas where the Grey Lady had been sighted, despite the Phantom's apparently benevolent intentions toward family members. The Grey Lady's apparent favoritism toward Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon became increasingly evident as the child matured into adolescence. Unlike other family members who reported feeling unnerved or frightened by spectral encounters, Elizabeth seemed to derive comfort from the Grey Lady's presence. Governess Madame Lang documented conversations in which Elizabeth spoke matter-of-factly about the kind lady in grey who visited her during difficult nights, describing interactions that suggested ongoing communication between the living child and the supernatural guardian. Contemporary psychological research offers rational explanations for the Grey Lady phenomenon that align with established patterns of family mythology and collective suggestion. Aristocratic households frequently developed elaborate ghost stories that served to reinforce family identity and historical continuity, with successive generations unconsciously perpetuating these legends through selective interpretation of ambiguous events. The consistent physical descriptions might result from cultural transmission of standardized imagery, while the correlation between appearances and family crises could reflect the human tendency to remember supernatural incidents more vividly during emotionally charged periods. Medieval castles naturally created atmospheric conditions conducive to supernatural interpretation, with drafts causing temperature fluctuations, architectural acoustics generating mysterious sounds, and limestone walls producing mineral scents that could be mistaken for phantom fragrances. The protective behavior attributed to the Grey Lady might represent psychological projection of maternal comfort during times of stress, with family members unconsciously creating benevolent, supernatural narratives to counterbalance the genuine terror generated by the Eastern Wing's disturbing phenomena. Yet the specificity and accuracy of the Grey Lady's apparent warnings exceeded what might be explained through conventional psychological mechanisms. Multiple witnesses documented precise temporal correlations between spectral appearances and subsequent events, including information about threats that materialized from directions and sources that could not have been anticipated through normal observation. The Phantom's selective favoritism toward Elizabeth, who would indeed achieve historical significance far beyond typical aristocratic expectations, suggested either remarkable coincidence or supernatural prescience that transcended rational explanation. The relationship between Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon and the Grey Lady represented a unique aspect of the future Queen Mother's supernatural education at GLAMIS Castle. While other family members experienced spectral, Encounters as frightening intrusions, Elizabeth developed what appeared to be a collaborative relationship with the Phantom Guardian. This comfort with supernatural protection would later manifest in her remarkable composure during national crises, as though she retained throughout her life the sense of being watched over by benevolent forces that transcended ordinary understanding. The Grey Lady's final documented appearance at GLAMIS Castle occurred in April 1953, just weeks before Elizabeth's coronation, as Queen Mother following her husband's death and daughter's accession to the throne. Servants reported seeing the Phantom standing in the castle's chapel, her typical expressions of urgent warning replaced by what witnesses described as maternal pride and peaceful satisfaction. After that sighting, the Grey Lady vanished from GLAMIS Castle forever, as though her long guardianship had finally achieved its ultimate purpose in shepherding Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon to her destiny as one of Britain's most beloved royal figures. When King George VI first visited GLAMIS as Duke of York, he inadvertently discovered why certain castle areas remained forbidden even to royalty. The future king's courtship of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon during the early 1920s required him to navigate not only the complex social protocols governing royal romantic pursuits, but also the supernatural minefield that defined daily existence within the Strathmore ancestral home. His initial visits to GLAMIS Castle occurred during a period of heightened paranormal activity, as though the castle's resident spirits recognized the historical significance of the developing relationship and responded with increased manifestations that tested the young duke's courage and commitment. Prince Albert's first overnight stay at GLAMIS in September 1921 began with what the family dismissed as typical castle eccentricities, but quickly escalated into encounters that challenged his rational, military-trained worldview. The guest suite assigned to the future king occupied the castle's south wing, strategically positioned to minimize his exposure to the most disturbing supernatural phenomena. Yet, even this carefully chosen location could not completely shield him from the castle's otherworldly inhabitants. His valet, James MacDonald, documented in his private journal that the Duke spent his first night at GLAMIS sitting fully dressed in an armchair, having abandoned all attempts to sleep after repeated disturbances that included doors opening and closing without human agency, and the sound of medieval music emanating from walls that contained no conceivable source for such melodies. The architectural investigation that Prince Albert conducted during subsequent visits revealed his methodical approach to understanding phenomena that defied conventional explanation. Armed with blueprints obtained from the estate's surveyor and a measuring tape borrowed from the castle's maintenance staff, he began mapping the building's layout with military precision, searching for logical explanations for the acoustic anomalies and structural peculiarities that characterized daily life at GLAMIS. His measurements revealed discrepancies between the castle's external dimensions and the total square footage of its documented interior spaces, suggesting the existence of concealed areas that exceeded what might be expected from typical medieval modifications. The Duke's growing fascination with the castle's mysteries paralleled his deepening affection for Elizabeth, creating a romantic courtship conducted against a backdrop of supernatural investigation and family secrecy. Letters between Prince Albert and his brother, the Prince of Wales, revealed his struggle to reconcile his rational military training with the undeniable evidence of paranormal activity that surrounded his beloved's childhood home. He wrote with characteristic understatement about unusual atmospheric conditions at GLAMIS while privately commissioning discreet inquiries into the castle's history through royal archivists and military intelligence contacts. Elizabeth's response to her suitor's supernatural encounters demonstrated the sophisticated coping mechanisms she had developed during her castle upbringing. Rather than dismissing his concerns or attempting to minimize the severity of paranormal incidents, she provided practical guidance for navigating GLAMIS Castle's otherworldly landscape. She taught him which corridors to avoid during certain hours, how to interpret the subtle environmental changes that preceded supernatural manifestations, and most importantly, how to maintain composure when confronted with phenomena that transcended rational explanation. Her matter-of-fact approach to the castle's haunted atmosphere revealed both her complete adaptation to extraordinary circumstances and her intuitive understanding of how to ease others into acceptance of the impossible. The most significant supernatural encounter involving Prince Albert occurred during his proposal visit in January 1923, when his romantic plans were disrupted by paranormal events that seemed designed to test his commitment to joining a family whose daily existence included regular communion with the dead. The Duke had arranged an elaborate evening proposal in the castle's library, complete with champagne and a carefully prepared speech. Yet, his romantic preparations were interrupted by manifestations that escalated throughout the day. Servants reported that the castle's supernatural inhabitants appeared to be conducting their own assessment of the royal suitor, generating disturbances that increased in intensity as the evening approached. The Eastern Wing's mysterious occupant became particularly agitated during Prince Albert's proposal evening, producing sounds that penetrated even the library's thick walls and created an atmosphere of barely controlled chaos that threatened to undermine the romantic mood the Duke sought to establish. Elizabeth's calm management of these supernatural interruptions impressed her suitor almost as much as her eventual acceptance of his proposal, as she demonstrated an ability to maintain grace and composure while surrounded by otherworldly manifestations that would have reduced most individuals to panic. Her skill in navigating both romantic protocols and supernatural disturbances convinced Prince Albert that she possessed the exceptional qualities necessary for royal service. Family resistance to the royal courtship stemmed partly from concerns about exposing the monarchy to the castle's supernatural reputation and the potential scandal that might result from public knowledge of the Strathmore family's darkest secrets. The 14th Earl of Strathmore worried that royal association might attract unwanted attention to GLAMIS Castle's mysteries, potentially leading to investigations that could reveal the family's carefully guarded shame. Correspondence between family members revealed debates about whether to warn Prince Albert about the full extent of the castle's paranormal activity, or to maintain the policy of discretion that had protected family secrets for generations. 17 documented supernatural incidents occurred during Prince Albert's courtship visits to GLAMIS Castle between 1921 and 1923, with 12 involving the future king as a direct witness to paranormal phenomena. 4 separate rooms were temporarily sealed during royal visits due to supernatural activity that family members deemed too severe for royal exposure. 23 servants were assigned specifically to manage household disruptions during ducal visits, nearly double the normal staffing levels required for comparable aristocratic guests. 8 modifications were made to the castle's daily routines to minimize Prince Albert's exposure to the most disturbing supernatural manifestations. The marriage negotiations between the royal family and the Strathmore household included unprecedented discussions about managing public exposure to GLAMIS Castle's supernatural reputation. Royal protocol experts worked with family representatives to develop strategies for limiting media access to the castle and controlling narratives about the bride's childhood home. These conversations marked the first time in modern royal history that wedding planning explicitly addressed paranormal considerations, establishing precedents for supernatural crisis management that would influence royal public relations for decades. Contemporary psychological analysis suggests rational explanations for the heightened supernatural activity during Prince Albert's courtship period. The stress generated by royal attention naturally intensified household tensions, potentially leading family members and servants to interpret normal events as paranormal manifestations. The Duke's methodical investigation of architectural anomalies might have resulted from his military training rather than genuine supernatural encounters, while his romantic attachment to Elizabeth could have predisposed him toward accepting her family's traditional ghost stories as authentic experiences. Castle environments historically generated acoustic and atmospheric conditions that encouraged supernatural interpretation, particularly during emotionally charged periods such as royal courtships. The architectural discrepancies noted by Prince Albert likely reflected centuries of medieval modifications rather than deliberate concealment, while the correlation between supernatural incidents and romantic milestones could represent selective memory that emphasized dramatic events while forgetting mundane explanations. Yet the systematic nature of paranormal phenomena during the courtship period, combined with Prince Albert's documented military precision in investigating these incidents, suggested circumstances that exceeded normal environmental factors or psychological suggestion. The royal family's unprecedented inclusion of supernatural considerations in marriage planning indicated recognition that Glamis Castle's mysteries represented genuine concerns rather than harmless family traditions. Most significantly, the future king's willingness to proceed with his romantic pursuit, despite extensive supernatural encounters, demonstrated either remarkable courage or his recognition that Elizabeth's extraordinary qualities justified accepting whatever otherworldly complications accompanied marriage into her haunted lineage. The secret room that Prince Albert discovered during his architectural investigations would remain sealed throughout his lifetime, its contents known only to Elizabeth and the Strathmore family members, who maintained their ancestors' terrible vigil. Elizabeth's ascension to Queen Mother brought royal resources to bear on Glamis Castle's mysteries, but some discoveries proved too dangerous for public revelation. The E.T. transformation of a duke's wife into the mother of a reigning monarch fundamentally altered the relationship between the British Crown and the supernatural secrets that had defined her childhood home for centuries. What had previously been managed as private family eccentricities now required the sophisticated apparatus of royal intelligence services, government censorship protocols, and diplomatic damage control mechanisms that protected the monarchy's public image from potentially devastating supernatural scandals. The classified investigation into Glamis Castle's paranormal phenomena began in 1936. Shortly after King Edward VIII's abdication crisis elevated Elizabeth's husband to the throne and positioned her as queen consort with unprecedented influence over royal household management. The inquiry, conducted under the direction of Sir Alexander Hardinge, the king's private secretary, represented the first systematic governmental study of supernatural activity within a property connected to the British royal family. Intelligence officers trained in counter-espionage techniques found themselves documenting spectral manifestations, analyzing architectural anomalies, and developing security protocols for phenomena that transcended conventional understanding of threats to royal safety. The investigation team's initial report, classified at the highest levels of government security, revealed the extraordinary scope of paranormal activity that had surrounded the new queen's formative years. Professional investigators, equipped with the most advanced recording equipment available in the 1930s, documented acoustic phenomena that defied scientific explanation, temperature fluctuations that followed no meteorological patterns, and electromagnetic disturbances that disabled equipment with suspicious regularity. Their findings suggested that Elizabeth had indeed spent her childhood within an environment where supernatural manifestations occurred with sufficient frequency and intensity to constitute a legitimate security concern for the Crown. Royal Intelligence Services discovered that the Strathmore family's centuries-old policy of discretion had successfully contained public knowledge of GLAMIS Castle's supernatural reputation, but this containment had required ongoing efforts that now fell under royal purview. The network of servants, medical practitioners, and local clergy who had maintained silence about the castle's mysteries represented a complex web of loyalties and financial dependencies that required careful management to prevent potential security breaches. Intelligence analysts identified dozens of individuals whose knowledge of royal family supernatural experiences could theoretically be exploited by foreign governments seeking to embarrass or destabilize the British monarchy. The wartime significance of these supernatural concerns became apparent during World War II, when strategic considerations forced the royal family to evaluate GLAMIS Castle as a potential refuge during German bombing campaigns. Military planners conducting security assessments of the property encountered phenomena that complicated their ability to guarantee royal safety within the castle's walls. The Eastern Wing's mysterious disturbances, which had intensified during periods of national crisis throughout history, generated concerns that wartime stress might trigger supernatural manifestations severe enough to compromise the royal family's physical and psychological well-being. Elizabeth's personal management of these wartime supernatural concerns demonstrated the leadership skills that would define her role as Queen Mother for decades to come. She worked directly with intelligence officials to develop protocols for minimizing paranormal disruption during potential royal residence periods, while simultaneously maintaining the family traditions that had successfully contained the castle's secrets for generations. Her ability to discuss spectral manifestations with the same practical efficiency she applied to conventional security matters impressed government officials and established her credibility as a reliable partner in managing unprecedented challenges. The development of royal cover-up protocols during this period represented a significant evolution in monarchical crisis management capabilities. Traditional royal public relations had addressed scandals involving financial impropriety, political missteps, and romantic indiscretions. But supernatural phenomena required entirely new approaches to information control and narrative management. The protocols developed for managing GLAMIS Castle's mysteries established templates that would later prove valuable during various royal crises involving unexplained phenomena at other Crown properties. 156 royal household staff members rotated through GLAMIS Castle between 1923 and 1952, with turnover rates significantly exceeding those at comparable royal properties due to supernatural-related resignations and dismissals. 12 official incident reports were filed with private secretary offices during this period, documenting supernatural encounters that required formal governmental response. 4 rooms within the castle were permanently sealed by royal decree during Elizabeth's tenure as Queen Mother, expanding the network of concealed areas that had originated with the Eastern Wing modifications. 89 years elapsed between the last documented sighting of the Monster of GLAMIS and the castle's eventual opening to public tourism, suggesting successful containment of the family's most shameful secret. The psychological impact on royal household staff assigned to GLAMIS Castle duties became a persistent management challenge that required innovative approaches to personnel retention and security clearance procedures. Staff members who experienced supernatural encounters underwent discreet psychological evaluation to assess their reliability and emotional stability, while those who resigned for supernatural-related reasons received generous severance packages that included comprehensive confidentiality agreements. The unusual working conditions at GLAMIS necessitated the development of specialized training programs that prepared royal servants for encounters with phenomena that transcended normal household management challenges. Elizabeth's coordination with intelligence services during supernatural incidents revealed her sophisticated understanding of the broader implications surrounding her family's otherworldly legacy. She recognized that public knowledge of royal supernatural experiences could potentially destabilize public confidence in the monarchy's rationality and competence, particularly during wartime periods when national morale depended upon perception of royal strength and stability. Her willingness to subordinate family traditions to national security considerations demonstrated the remarkable transformation from castle-dwelling aristocrat to responsible royal matriarch. The most significant supernatural incident requiring government intervention occurred during the royal family's 1948 Christmas gathering at GLAMIS, when paranormal manifestations escalated to levels that threatened to disrupt official royal engagements and potentially attract unwanted media attention. The Eastern Wing's mysterious occupant, which had remained relatively quiet for several years, suddenly resumed the violent disturbances that had characterized earlier decades. Intelligence services implemented emergency protocols that included media blackouts, servant relocations, and the deployment of specialized personnel trained in managing supernatural crisis situations. Contemporary analysis suggests rational explanations for the government's extensive involvement in managing GLAMIS Castle's supernatural reputation. Royal intelligence services naturally investigated any phenomenon that might potentially embarrass or compromise the monarchy, regardless of whether supernatural elements were genuinely present or simply perceived by suggestible household staff. The elaborate security protocols might have been developed to manage public relations challenges rather than authentic paranormal threats, while the classified nature of investigations could reflect standard governmental caution rather than acknowledgement of genuine supernatural activity. The psychological stress generated by royal responsibilities during wartime could account for increased perception of supernatural phenomena among household staff and family members, while the isolation of castle environments during emergency periods might have intensified normal atmospheric conditions into seemingly paranormal experiences. The government's willingness to invest resources in supernatural crisis management might represent bureaucratic overcaution rather than official recognition of otherworldly threats to royal security. Yet the systematic nature of governmental response to GLAMIS Castle's supernatural challenges, combined with the involvement of senior intelligence officials and the development of specialized protocols, suggested recognition that the phenomena exceeded normal public relations concerns. The consistency of supernatural reports across multiple decades and diverse witness backgrounds indicated circumstances that transcended conventional psychological or environmental explanations. Most significantly, Elizabeth's personal credibility with government officials and her practical approach to managing paranormal incidents suggested that her supernatural experiences represented genuine encounters rather than aristocratic eccentricity. The Crown's dark knowledge of GLAMIS Castle's secrets would remain classified long after Elizabeth's death, protecting both royal dignity and national security from revelations that might fundamentally alter public perception of the monarchy's relationship with forces beyond rational understanding. Even in death, the Queen Mother's connection to GLAMIS Castle revealed one last mystery that challenges everything historians believed about Britain's most beloved royal matriarch. The documents unsealed following Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's passing in 2002 contained revelations that fundamentally altered scholarly understanding of her relationship with the supernatural forces that had shaped her childhood and influenced her approach to royal duty throughout her unprecedented century of life. Among her private papers, archivists discovered detailed journals chronicling supernatural encounters that extended far beyond the childhood experiences documented by household staff, suggesting that her connection to GLAMIS Castle's otherworldly inhabitants had remained active throughout her adult life. The most startling discovery emerged from correspondence between the Queen Mother and successive Earls of Strathmore, revealing that she had maintained direct involvement in managing the Eastern Wing's terrible secret until mere months before her death. Letters dated as late as 2001 discussed ongoing concerns about the family burden and included detailed instructions for maintaining security protocols that had protected the Strathmore lineage's shameful secret for nearly 2 centuries. Her handwriting, though tremulous with age, retained the authoritative tone that had characterized her royal communications for decades, suggesting that supernatural crisis management had remained a priority even as her physical strength declined. Personal testimony from her final years provided unprecedented insight into the psychological cost of carrying supernatural secrets across an entire century of life. Lady Margaret Rhodes, the Queen Mother's niece and companion, documented conversations in which Elizabeth spoke with increasing candor about her childhood experiences at GLAMIS Castle and their lasting impact on her worldview. These revelations included detailed descriptions of ongoing communication with spectral inhabitants of the castle, encounters that had continued throughout her adult life, despite her physical distance from the property and her absorption in royal duties. The legal arrangements surrounding castle inheritance revealed the extraordinary measures taken to ensure that family secrets would survive the Queen Mother's death without compromising future generations. Her will included specific provisions for maintaining sealed areas within GLAMIS Castle, funding for specialized security personnel, and detailed instructions for managing any supernatural incidents that might arise during transition periods. The complexity of these arrangements suggested that supernatural considerations had influenced royal estate planning at the highest levels, incorporating otherworldly concerns into legal frameworks designed to protect the monarchy's reputation across multiple generations. Modern, paranormal investigators gained unprecedented access to GLAMIS Castle following the Queen Mother's death, as changing family attitudes toward publicity allowed researchers to examine areas that had remained sealed for centuries. Their findings included electromagnetic readings that defied scientific explanation, architectural evidence of ongoing structural modifications designed to contain supernatural activity, and audio recordings of phenomena that matched historical descriptions documented in family papers. The investigation team's equipment failures occurred with suspicious frequency in specific areas of the castle, particularly the Eastern Wing, where the family's greatest shame had been concealed for generations. Contemporary analysis of the Queen Mother's supernatural legacy benefited from advanced psychological and historical research methods unavailable during her lifetime. Scholars examining her personal papers discovered patterns of behavior that suggested genuine supernatural sensitivity rather than aristocratic theatricality, including accurate predictions of family crises, detailed knowledge of historical events she could not have learned through conventional sources, and consistent references to spiritual guidance that transcended traditional religious experience. Her remarkable longevity and psychological resilience throughout a century marked by unprecedented historical upheavals, seemed inexplicable, without considering the supernatural influences that had shaped her character development. The castle's response to the Queen Mother's death generated the most compelling evidence yet documented for genuine supernatural activity at GLAMIS. Multiple witnesses reported dramatic increases in paranormal manifestations immediately following her passing, as though her death had disrupted spiritual equilibrium that she had maintained through decades of careful management. The Eastern Wing's long, silent, mysterious occupant resumed violent disturbances that echoed the most severe incidents from the 19th century, suggesting that Elizabeth's presence had somehow contained or controlled forces that now raged unchecked through the castle's ancient corridors. 102 years of the Queen Mother's life had been intertwined with GLAMIS Castle mysteries, from her birth within its haunted walls to her final supernatural crisis management decisions mere months before her death. 637 years of documented supernatural activity within the castle reached their crescendo during her lifetime, as though centuries of accumulated otherworldly energy had focused upon her exceptional character. 13 generations of the Strathmore family had been bound by the terrible secret of the Eastern Wing, with Elizabeth representing both the culmination and potential resolution of their ancestral burden. One question remained unanswered, despite decades of investigation and analysis. What truth had been so horrifying that it shaped the very foundation of modern British royalty? Staff members at GLAMIS Castle documented remarkable changes in supernatural activity patterns following the Queen Mother's funeral, with phenomena shifting from the chaotic violence that had characterized earlier periods to manifestations that seemed purposeful and communicative. Servants reported encounters with spectral figures who appeared to be searching for someone who would never return, their anguished expressions suggesting grief that transcended the boundary between life and death. The Grey Lady, who had vanished following Elizabeth's coronation as Queen Mother, reappeared for the first time in 50 years, her presence now marked by profound sadness rather than the protective vigilance that had characterized her earlier manifestations. The theological implications of the Queen Mother's supernatural experiences attracted attention from religious scholars seeking to understand how otherworldly encounters had influenced one of the most publicly devout figures in modern royal history. Her private journals revealed sophisticated theological reasoning about the relationship between supernatural phenomena and Christian faith, suggesting that her spiritual development had been shaped by direct experience with forces that transcended conventional religious doctrine. Her ability to maintain orthodox Christian beliefs while acknowledging supernatural realities that challenged traditional theological frameworks demonstrated intellectual flexibility that few religious figures achieved. Rational explanations for the post-mortem supernatural incidents at GLAMIS Castle could include psychological projection by grieving family members and staff, environmental changes resulting from reduced human activity in previously occupied areas, and the natural deterioration of aging building systems that created acoustic and atmospheric anomalies. The correlation between the Queen Mother's death and increased paranormal activity might reflect the human tendency to interpret ambiguous events as meaningful during periods of emotional stress. While the discovery of supernatural references in her private papers could represent literary embellishment rather than authentic experience records, modern building analysis revealed structural characteristics at GLAMIS Castle that could account for many reported supernatural phenomena, including acoustic properties that amplified and distorted sound, electromagnetic fields generated by mineral deposits in the castle's stone construction and air circulation patterns that created temperature fluctuations and sensory experiences easily mistaken for paranormal activity. The Queen Mother's documented supernatural sensitivity might have reflected heightened perception of natural environmental variations, rather than communication with otherworldly entities. Yet the specificity and consistency of supernatural activity throughout the Queen Mother's lifetime, combined with the sophisticated crisis management protocols developed by Royal Intelligence Services, suggested recognition that Glamis Castle's mysteries represented genuine phenomena rather than elaborate family mythology. The architectural modifications documented across multiple centuries, the psychological impact on successive family generations, and the ongoing security concerns that influenced royal policy decisions indicated circumstances that transcended conventional explanation. Most significantly, the Queen Mother's personal credibility and rational approach to supernatural crisis management suggested that her otherworldly experiences represented authentic encounters that had fundamentally shaped her approach to royal service. The final assessment of Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon's supernatural legacy requires balancing documented evidence against the limitations of historical investigation into phenomena that, by definition, transcend normal understanding. Her transformation from a child who conversed with castle ghosts into the Queen Mother who inspired a nation through its darkest hours represented either the most remarkable coincidence in modern royal history or the successful integration of otherworldly wisdom into exemplary public service. The question that haunted Glamis Castle for centuries ultimately became the question that defined her remarkable life. Whether supernatural forces represent elaborate self-deception or authentic spiritual realities that occasionally intersect with human experience in ways that transform individuals into something greater than their circumstances would normally allow. The terrifying secret of Glamis Castle died with the Queen Mother, yet its influence continues to shape the British monarchy through the precedents she established for managing crises that transcend rational understanding.